What's up, everybody? It's Luke James, not the singer. If you're looking to get your music reviewed, you can hit up this email that's right here. But right now, you are tuned into another episode of The Archives where we take a look at classic albums from the past. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Nas's debut album, Illmatic, and Nas is an MC out of New York who is known as one of hip-hop's GOATs. Of course, his greatness expands beyond this album because he has had a very successful career, but this is the one right here that acted as a catalyst in regards to making him considered one of the GOATs. Really considered a classic by pretty much everyone who loves hip-hop, and I would say that this is one of the most respected debut albums of all time, man. It dropped way back in the day. We're talking about 1994, and he actually was working on this when he was just a teenager. He started writing and recording at 17, and then dropped it 4 years later when he was 21. So that to me alone is very impressive. This kid who's coming out of New York, coming out of the Queensbridge houses, just putting his experiences to music and really changing the world, man. It's actually fascinating to me that a teenager made one of hip-hop's most respected albums, because a lot of the time you got to live a lot of life in order to really grow and be able to go into a lot of depth, but this is a young guy who had a lot to say, and with this album he put it all out there. Now, to be clear, the song Halftime is on this album, but that actually dropped back in 1992 as part of the Zebrahead soundtrack. That was a movie that I don't know anything about. Apparently I think it had something to do with interracial relationships or something like that. I didn't even know about this movie until I was looking back and doing research, but that's where that song first came from, and it is featured on here as well. What you're going to get with this one is some chest-pounding drums and horns. Really does have a hard-hitting beat on it, and I think this is most people's first experience with Nas, who was going by Nasty Nas at the time. He really does have some great bars on here, like "You couldn't catch me in the streets without a ton of reefer." That's like Malcolm X catching the jungle fever, and he was so dope on this track that a lot of people were actually comparing him to the God MC Rakim. So right out of the gate, that shows you the type of respect and hype that Nas had when he came out with this first song. But the actual lead single to this album, Illmatic, was It Ain't Hard to Tell, and to this day, this is still one of my favorite Nas tracks, man. I absolutely love this one. You're going to hear horns from Kool and the Gang's song NT on here, and you're also going to hear some elements from one of my favorite Michael Jackson songs, Human Nature. This is just an incredible beat, the way that it's all blended together so effortlessly and smoothly. Still love this beat. A lot of people have remixed Human Nature. You might have heard it on that SWV song. Of course, Elzai actually went on to do Illmatic, which did redo a lot of the songs here, but that's a whole other story. But man, I love some of the boasting we're getting from Nas on this boom bap banger, like when he spits, "My mic check is life or death, breathing a sniper's breath," a testament to his breath control and also how accurate he is in the booth. And I like these bars too when he says, "School a fool well, you feel it like Braille, it ain't hard to tell, I kick a skill like Shaquille holds a pill," which obviously is a shout out to Shaquille O'Neal, who was mashing shit up in the 90s when he was a part of the Orlando Magic, man, just tearing down rims, going crazy. Of course, Shaq Fu came out later. I don't know why I brought up Shaq Fu just now. That wasn't even in my notes, but I just said it, goddammit, so it is what it is. Go play some Shaq Fu. This was a dope track. And Halftime and It Ain't Hard to Tell were both produced by Large Professor, who also did the song One Time for Your Mind. This one to me is my least favorite track on here. It's still not bad, but just lyrically and production-wise, I think it pales in comparison to everything else going on here. That might be a hot take. I don't know. We'll see in the comment section, but to me, that would be my least favorite. And I'd be curious to know what your guys' least favorite track here was as well. But to keep moving forward, Nas enlisted a lot of all-time greats for the production on this album, and in an interview that I watched on his YouTube channel, he actually said that this was very unique at the time. Back in the day, most albums would come out being produced by one person, maybe one or two people if they were getting a bit more creative with it, but this time around he had all kinds of big names on here, including Pete Rock, who did The World Is Yours. I still love the elegant piano production on here, and that ambitious chorus rings true today, man. He's just reminding us that the world is yours. You can do what you gotta do, get what you gotta get, just keep moving forward. Very iconic track all around. And of course, this is the track where he spits the infamous bars, "I'm out for presidents to represent me," which would later get sampled and reworked on Jay-Z's song, Dead Presidents 2. Of course, later on, Jay-Z would get at Nas on the takeover when he said, "Yeah, I sampled your voice, you was using it wrong, you made it a hot line, I made it a hot song." So that was just kind of cool looking back at this album, seeing how it would come forward once again in the future over the years, on that Jay-Z album Reasonable Doubt, and then years and years later on the Blueprint. when Nas and Jay were beefing. So that goes to show you that there's a lot of deep history running throughout this album. I'm not going to be able to break down everything, and that's something I stress every time I do an archives review, because there's so much to talk about with these classic albums. I'm just trying to give you a quick breakdown of what I liked about it, what I didn't like, giving you a bit of a history lesson, talking about samples, all those types of things. But we are going to move forward onto the next part, where I got to shout out DJ Premier, because he did all kinds of dope ass beats on here as well. Of course, he did New York State of Mind. This is one of the staples of this album, where you're getting those snappy snares and quintessential piano keys from DJ Premier, as well as a sampled hook that borrows from Rakim's song Mahogany. As for Nas himself, he's on here rapping about the harsh reality of life in New York, while also spitting about his lavish dreams on that second verse. So this is absolutely one of Nas's most iconic tracks, especially because it showcases that effortless flow that he has. I mean, he's flowing his ass off all over this album. That's one of the things that always comes up with Nas, especially when you talk about his earlier work. It's just how comfortable he sounded on a mic. And even though he never really made something that was as good as this, in my opinion, he still had plenty of other albums that were good. But this right here was just incredibly dope, man. Going back and reviewing this was certainly a pleasure, because I don't really have Nas in my rotation on a regular basis, but this album right here is one of the Nas albums that I would revisit, so it was cool taking a look back at it. Now, Nas's vivid imagery throughout this album is one of the main things that really put him on such a high level to go along with his flow, as well as these great production choices. And you're going to hear this on Memory Lane, where he's getting nostalgic about his upbringing. He raps about how he dropped out of school to really focus on his hip-hop career, and it's actually pretty cool how at such a young age he could go this deep on this song and throughout this album. See, he lived such a fast life, went through so many different things and experiences that a lot of people don't go through, and his ability to take that and make it poetic and make it into these songs is just fascinating to me. You're also going to get another Primo production here. It has a very warm and nostalgic feel to it because of the vocal samples throughout, and these lines always stuck out to me when Nas says, "It's real, grew up in trife life, the times of white lines, the high pipes, murderous night times and knife fights invite crimes." Just a reminder of his harsh environment coming up in the Queensbridge houses. Now, he actually represents for the Queensbridge houses on Represent, as the song title suggests, and yes, this is another DJ Premier production, and he spits on this one, "Could use a gun, son, but fuck being the wanted man, but if I hit rock bottom, then I'ma be the son of Sam," which is a reference to how desperation can make people do crazy things. And of course, the son of Sam was David Berkowitz, a serial killer who had New York gripped in terror back in the 70s. You're also going to get some chanting from Nas's crew all over this track, but other than that, there aren't a whole lot of features to break down, other than Life's a Bitch, where AZ absolutely snaps. AZ has always had one of my favorite flows in hip-hop. Again, just like Nas, he's so effortless, buttery, and smooth, and they have great chemistry, man. Every time you see Nas and AZ on a track together, that shit is a smash. You're going to get a lyrical display, lots of great technical skill, and it's no different on this track. So both MCs are on here exploring the ups and downs of life, how it's a bitch, but you got to keep going regardless. And you're going to get production from LES on here, who sampled the Gap Band song Yearning for Your Love. Very smooth and groovy, soulful production here, and that horn solo on the end from Oludara ties it all together nicely. So I really did like this beat. And the last feature to talk about is Q-Tip, who pops up doing the chorus on One Love, as well as the production. Really cool beat here as well, where you're getting that slinky bass line and some thumb piano, which does have a pretty interesting sound to it. I also think the songwriting on here is some of the best on the album. This is a track that has Nas writing to one of his friends who's doing a bid, just letting him know what's going on outside of those walls and keeping him in the loop. And fun fact, that third verse actually got acted out in the movie Belly many years later. It's that scene where Nas is sitting down talking to that young kid Shorty, just letting him know what it's really like out here in these streets. They're having a little conversation. So it's cool how we went back to Illmatic, took the verse from One Love, and put that into that movie, which certainly isn't a masterpiece of a movie, but hey, it's almost a classic in its own way just because we all know it, we all know the soundtrack, we all talk about it. Maybe in that instance, classic doesn't mean that it's great. Maybe I shouldn't say classic. Maybe I'll say Belly was just an important part of hip-hop history in a weird sort of way. I know it sounds strange to say that. I might be bugging, but I'm going to leave it in this review because that's how I feel, because Belly certainly had its impact, and we still talk about it today. We don't got to get into the second one, and I don't know if there's a third one, but either way, Belly, yeah, I'm spending too much time on Belly. So we're going to wrap it up right there, man. That's everything I got to say right now about Illmatic. Obviously, I can't get into everything, as I said earlier, because there's so many things to talk about with these classic albums, but I just like to lay the groundwork for discussion purposes, and we can continue it down below in the comments section. So make sure you let me know how you feel about this album. Do you think it is one of the classics of all time, one of the strongest debuts ever? I certainly think it is, even though I'm not a diehard Nas fan, but I always want to know what you think, so let me know down below. Make sure you do that good YouTube and social media stuff where you show me love and you show me lots of it. Thank you for watching, everybody. I will see you next time.